You're standing on what feels like solid, unmoving ground, a landscape that seems as eternal as time itself. But beneath your feet, something incredible is happening. The Earth is breathing, hidden from view, deep within the crust. Vast networks of geological fissures shift and stretch, carrying the pulse of a living, evolving planet. These are not just cracks in the ground, they are the planet's ancient storytellers, holding secrets of continents in motion, volcanoes yet to awaken, and forces that have shaped human history itself. For millennia, these fissures have witnessed the drama of our world unfolding, from the birth of mountains to the slow, relentless drift of tectonic plates. What if I told you that these often overlooked features are far more than just fractures in the rock? Their breathing points natural vents where the Earth exhales gases, magma, and energy, influencing everything from the air we breathe to the stability of the ground beneath our cities. Throughout history, civilizations have risen and fallen in their shadow, drawn to the resources they offer and imperiled by the hazards they pose. And today, as we face a changing climate and growing demand for sustainable energy, understanding these dynamic structures has never been more urgent. Mapping Earth's fissures isn't just an academic exercise, it's a key to unlocking mysteries about our past and navigating the challenges of our future. So join me on a journey into the heart of our planet's hidden anatomy. Together, we'll explore how these geological wonders have inspired myths and fueled discoveries, how modern science is revealing their breathtaking complexity, and why, whether you realize it or not, they've already touched your life in ways you've never imagined. This is the story of Earth's forgotten fissures, and it's one that will forever change how you see the world beneath your feet. To truly grasp the scale and significance of these geological features, we need to start with the basics. A fissure is essentially a crack or a fracture within the Earth's crust, but these aren't just random breaks in the rock. They are the direct result of immense planet-scale forces constantly at work beneath our feet. They form primarily in three ways: the immense pressure of tectonic plates grinding against or pulling apart from one another can stretch the crust until it splinters. The upward thrust of magma from deep within the Earth can force its way through rock, creating a pathway to the surface. And even the persistent, slow work of water, wind, and ice can wear away at weaknesses in the rock, widening them into dramatic canyons and gorges over millions of years. What's truly astonishing is their incredible range in size. Some fissures are microscopic, invisible to the naked eye, while others are so vast they can be seen from space. Think of something like the East African Rift, a colossal tear in the Earth's surface that runs for thousands of miles, literally splitting a continent apart in slow motion. Each of these features, from the tiny to the titanic, serves a critical function in our planet's geological machinery. They act as natural vents, the planet's very own breathing points. Through these openings, the Earth exhales, releasing pent-up energy in the form of steam, volcanic gases like carbon dioxide, and occasionally rivers of incandescent magma. They also allow water to circulate deep underground, feeding aquifers and creating springs that have sustained life for eons. Despite their fundamental role in shaping our world, fissures have often been misunderstood or completely overlooked throughout history. In ancient times, a steaming crack in the ground might have been seen as a gateway to the underworld or the dwelling place of a deity. Even as science advanced, the true nature of these dynamic systems was slow to be recognized. It took pioneering thinkers like the 18th century geologist James Hutton to change our perspective. Hutton looked at the Scottish landscape and saw not a static, unchanging world, but a dynamic one, what he called a world in transition. He proposed that the same geological forces we see shaping the Earth today, like the ones that create fissures, have been operating for all of deep time. This was a revolutionary idea. It meant that these cracks weren't just scars from a single catastrophic event. They were evidence of a living, breathing planet that is constantly renewing and reshaping itself. This foundational shift in thinking is why mapping and understanding these features is so crucial today. They are not merely inert parts of the scenery, they are active participants in the Earth story. By studying them, we gain insights into everything from the formation of precious mineral deposits to the patterns of earthquakes that shake our cities. They are the planet's pulse points, and learning to read them is one of the most important ways we can understand the dynamic world we call home. Long before the birth of modern geology, humanity was already in a profound relationship with these great cracks in the Earth, interpreting them through the powerful lens of myth and spirituality. In ancient Greece, a fissure on the slopes of Mount Parnassus was not merely a geological feature. It was the sacred omphalos, the navel of the world. From this crack, intoxicating vapors were believed to rise, breathed by the oracle of Delphi to channel prophecies from the god Apollo. The fissure was a direct line to the divine, a place where the veil between the earthly and the supernatural was thin. This view was echoed across the globe. Norse legends spoke of terrifying chasms like Ginnungagap, the primordial void from which all creation emerged. For many Native American cultures, great rifts and canyons were not carved by slow erosion, but by the powerful actions of ancestral beings or great spirits, weaving these landmarks into their creation stories and spiritual identities. The Earth's fractures were never seen as passive. They were dynamic, alive with meaning, and often feared or revered as the work of gods. A significant shift in this understanding began to stir during the Renaissance, a period of reawakening that championed direct observation over pure dogma. It was here that a mind like Leonardo da Vinci's turned its genius to the natural world. As he wandered the Italian countryside, his keen eyes did not just see rocks, they read stories written in stone. He observed distinct layers in cliff faces and the patterns of fissures that ran through them, and he made a revolutionary connection. He proposed that these layers were actually the remnants of ancient seafloors, lifted high above the waves by immense, slow-moving forces within the Earth itself. His sketches and notes reveal a man centuries ahead of his time, rationally deducing that the landscape was not a static creation but a dynamic, changing entity, with fissures serving as clear evidence of those powerful subterranean movements. This was a quiet but monumental leap from supernatural explanation toward scientific inquiry. While European thinkers were beginning to observe and speculate, indigenous cultures around the world were cultivating a deep practical and spiritual knowledge of these same landscapes, knowledge forged through generations of lived experience. The Maori of Aotearoa, New Zealand, for instance, have long lived among the intense volcanic fissures of the Taupo volcanic zone. They understood the immense geothermal energy not as a destructive force to be feared, but as a practical resource for cooking, heating, and bathing, and they wove the powerful deities of fire and earth into their cultural fabric. Similarly, cultures in the Andes learned to read the mountains, understanding that certain fissures and rock formations could indicate underground water sources or signal areas of instability. This traditional knowledge, passed down orally, represented a sophisticated, holistic understanding of the land that often seamlessly blended the practical with the sacred. The true revolution, however, the one that would finally give us the framework to understand why the Earth cracks apart, had to wait until the 19th and 20th centuries. For centuries, scientists had puzzled over the curious jigsaw puzzle fit of continents like South America and Africa. The presence of identical fossil species on opposite sides of vast oceans was a deep mystery. The breakthrough began with Alfred Wegener's theory of continental drift in the early 1900s. He proposed the audacious idea that continents were not fixed in place but slowly moving across the globe. While his initial theory was met with skepticism, largely because he couldn't explain the mechanism, he planted the essential seed. The missing piece was found on the deep ocean floor. Through mid-century mapping efforts, scientists discovered a continuous submerged mountain range winding around the entire planet, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, and running right down its center was a colossal, active fissure. This was the proof. This global network of rifts was where new crust was being born, welling up from the Earth's interior and literally pushing the continents apart. The theory of plate tectonics was born, and suddenly, every fissure on Earth could be seen in a stunning new light. They were not random cracks. They were the visible evidence of a planet's restless, dynamic crust, a living map of continental drift in action. This paradigm shift didn't just solve an old mystery. It set the stage for every modern tool we now use to map and monitor the planet's perpetual, breathing motion. Now that we understand how humanity's perception of these features has evolved, let's turn our attention to the fissures themselves and explore their incredible diversity. The Earth doesn't just have one type of crack. It has a whole geological vocabulary of fractures, each born from a different process and each with its own unique personality and impact on the landscape. Broadly speaking, we can group them into three fundamental families: tectonic fissures, volcanic fissures, and erosional fissures. First, and on the grandest scale, are the tectonic fissures. These are the planet's most dramatic and powerful tiers, formed by the immense, slow-motion ballet of tectonic plates. When these colossal slabs of Earth's crust pull apart from one another, the crust stretches, thins, and eventually fractures. This process creates massive rift valleys and undersea ridges. The most spectacular example is the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, a continuous underwater mountain range that snakes down the center of the Atlantic Ocean. Running along its crest is a deep, central fissure where magma constantly wells up from the mantle, creating new oceanic crust and pushing the Americas away from Europe and Africa at roughly the same speed your fingernails grow. On land, we see this same process at work in the East African Rift, a place where a continent is actively being torn in two. But tectonic forces aren't just about pulling apart, they also involve sliding. Transform boundaries where plates grind past each other horizontally create a different kind of fissure system. The San Andreas Fault in California is perhaps the world's most famous example. Not a single clean break, but a complex, branching network of fractures that marks the boundary between the Pacific and North American plates. The constant stress here creates a landscape of linear valleys, offset streams, and long, straight ridges, a visible scar of immense subterranean pressure. Then we have the volcanic fissures, which are the Earth's most direct and fiery exhalations. These form when molten rock or magma, under tremendous pressure, forces its way upward through the crust. Instead of erupting from a single central volcano, the magma can exploit a pre-existing weakness or create a new, long fracture, leading to what's known as a fissure eruption. The resulting landscape is often a series of spatter cones and lava vents lined up along a single, linear tier. Iceland is the absolute textbook location for observing this phenomenon, sitting directly atop the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. The recent and breathtaking eruptions at Fagradalsfjall are a perfect example, where a crack in the ground in the Geldingadalur Valley split open and began spewing fountains of incandescent lava, eventually building a completely new volcanic cone over time. These fissure eruptions are often less explosive than their central vent counterparts, but they can be incredibly prolific, flooding vast areas with basalt lava to create extensive plains called flood basalts, like the Columbia River Plateau in the northwestern United States. The third major category operates on a completely different principle and timeline. Erosional fissures are not created by forces from within the Earth, but by forces acting upon its surface. Here, the primary sculptors are water, wind, and ice. Over millions of years, water can exploit tiny weaknesses in rock, like a joint or a small fracture, and begin to wear it away. This slow, patient process can eventually carve deep, narrow gorges known as slot canyons. The American Southwest is a gallery of this stunning artistry. Places like Antelope Canyon in Arizona are not tectonic wounds or volcanic vents. They are exquisite sculptures carved into Navajo sandstone by flash floods carrying abrasive sand and grit. The result is a winding, intimate fissure with flowing, smooth walls that seem to defy the very solidity of the rock. In other environments, like limestone regions, slightly acidic rainwater dissolves the bedrock along fractures, creating vast underground cave systems and sinkholes. Even the relentless force of wind can sandblast soft rock, widening cracks into dramatic desert features. While they may seem more passive, these erosional fissures are a powerful testament to the patient, transformative power of surface processes, creating some of the most visually arresting landscapes on the planet. This simple classification helps us make sense of the incredible variety of Earth's breathing cracks. From the continent-splitting power of a tectonic rift to the fiery birth of a volcanic field and the patient, watery carving of a slot canyon, each type tells a different part of our planet's dynamic story. They are the visible expression of the endless dialogue between the Earth's internal engine and the external forces that shape its surface, reminding us that the ground beneath our feet is anything but still. For thousands of years, the presence of a fissure in the Earth has been a double-edged sword for human communities, a source of both incredible bounty and profound peril. These geological features have not merely been a backdrop to human history, they have actively directed its course, determining where we build our cities, how we power our societies, and even what we believe. The most fundamental draw has always been resources. Fissures act as natural plumbing for the planet, channeling mineral-rich fluids from deep within the crust. As these fluids cool, they deposit incredibly valuable ores. The gold that fueled empires, the silver that built economies, and the copper that launched the Bronze Age were often concentrated in veins along these very fractures. The Great Dyke of Zimbabwe is a staggering example, a massive geological fissure over 500 kilometers long that is one of the world's most significant sources of platinum, chromium, and other precious metals, a treasure chest literally cracked open from below. Beyond mineral wealth, fissures provide something even more vital: energy and water. In geologically active regions, these cracks allow superheated water and steam to rise towards the surface, creating natural hot springs and accessible geothermal reservoirs. The Romans were masters of harnessing this gift, building elaborate bath complexes like those in Bath, England, around thermal springs that emerged from a fissure in the limestone bedrock. These were not merely places for bathing, they were social hubs, healing centers, and sacred spaces. This relationship continues today in places like Iceland, where nearly 90% of homes are heated by geothermal energy tapped directly from the volcanic fissure systems that crisscross the island, turning a potentially destructive force into a cornerstone of modern, sustainable living. Yet, the decision to live near these dynamic zones has always been a calculated risk. The same tectonic fissures that create fertile soil and transport water can also unleash catastrophic earthquakes. The Jordan Rift Valley, part of the vast Dead Sea Transform Fault system, is a prime example of this ancient dilemma. This massive geological tier created a natural corridor for migration and trade, but it also holds the ruins of cities like Jericho and Petra, which have been shaken and rebuilt countless times over millennia. Communities here developed a profound resilience, adapting their architecture and their lives to the occasional but inevitable tremors. They learned to read the landscape, understanding that the very fissures that threatened them also provided the life-giving springs that made civilization possible in an arid land. This intricate dance with danger and opportunity is a testament to human ingenuity in the face of planetary forces. Perhaps the most fascinating intersection of fissures and humanity lies not in the physical, but in the spiritual. Long before science could explain the subterranean forces at work, cultures worldwide wove these mysterious, often steaming cracks into their mythologies. We already touched on the oracle at Delphi, but the phenomenon was global. In Hawaii, the Kilauea volcano's East Rift Zone was considered the home of Pele, the passionate and volatile goddess of fire. Offerings were made to appease her, and eruptions were seen as expressions of her divine will. In the Andes, certain fissures and caves were revered as Pacarinas, sacred places of emergence where ancestral beings first came into the world. These stories were more than just folklore. They were a framework for understanding the awesome and terrifying power of the natural world. They provided rules for living in hazardous areas, often designating the most active and dangerous fissures as taboo, which inadvertently protected people from harm. This deep, symbolic connection reveals that our relationship with the planet's fractures is not just geological or economic. It is woven into the very fabric of human imagination and our eternal quest to find meaning in the landscape around us. The leap from ancient observation to modern understanding required more than just a shift in perspective. It demanded a whole new set of eyes. Today, we no longer have to rely solely on what we can see at the surface. We have an incredible array of technologies that allow us to peer deep into the Earth's crust, measure its most minute movements, and map its hidden fissure networks in breathtaking detail. This high-tech toolkit has utterly transformed our relationship with the planet's breathing cracks, turning them from mysterious threats into measurable, manageable systems. At the forefront of this revolution is satellite technology. Instruments like synthetic aperture radar, or SAR, mounted on satellites such as the European Space Agency's Sentinel-1, do something that seems almost like magic. They send radar pulses down to Earth and measure the precise time it takes for the signal to bounce back. By comparing these measurements over time, scientists can detect ground deformation with an accuracy of just a few millimeters. This means we can actually see a fissure system straining and swelling as magma moves underground or as tectonic stress builds up along a fault, all from hundreds of miles in space, often long before any shaking or eruption occurs on the surface. But to truly appreciate the fine details, we need to get a bit closer. That's where LiDAR comes in. Imagine flying over a dense forest or a rugged volcanic landscape with a laser scanner that can literally strip away the vegetation, digitally peeling back the layers to reveal the bare earth beneath. LiDAR, which stands for Light Detection and Ranging, does exactly that. It creates incredibly high-resolution, three-dimensional maps of the ground surface, exposing fissures, fault lines, and subtle ground fractures that are completely invisible to the naked eye, hidden under thick canopy or soil. This technology has been a game-changer in places like the Pacific Northwest, where it has revealed a vastly more complex network of active faults than anyone had previously suspected, completely rewriting our understanding of seismic risk for entire regions. Of course, sometimes you need to get right down on the ground to feel the planet's pulse. This is the domain of global positioning system technology and a dense network of seismic sensors. While your phone's GPS might get you to a coffee shop within a few meters, scientific-grade GPS receivers, permanently installed in networks across fault zones and volcanoes, can track their own movement with millimeter precision. They act like tiny, permanent benchmarks, constantly recording how the crust is stretching, compressing, or sliding. Alongside them, seismometers act as a stethoscope for the Earth, listening for the faint tremors and tiny fractures that signal stress building deep within a fissure system. When these two datasets are combined, they create a powerful real-time picture of subsurface activity, allowing scientists to distinguish between the harmless settling of rock and the ominous, steady build-up of energy that could precede a major earthquake. The real power, however, lies in integration. It's not just one technology, but the fusion of all of them: satellite data, airborne LiDAR, ground-based GPS, and seismic readings that creates a comprehensive digital nervous system for the planet. This integrated data is fed into sophisticated computer models that can simulate how a fissure might behave under different conditions, helping to predict the path of a lava flow or the intensity of ground shaking. Projects like NASA now retired EO-1 satellite, which carried advanced hyperspectral images, demonstrated this by identifying mineral compositions associated with active fissures from orbit. And now, drones are taking this to a hyper-local level. In active volcanic regions like Hawaii or Iceland, researchers can fly drones equipped with gas sensors and thermal cameras directly into the plumes of erupting fissures, collecting data that would be far too dangerous for a human to obtain. This multi-layered, technological approach has moved us from simply observing these dynamic features to actively listening to them, giving us an unprecedented ability to anticipate their next move, and in doing so, better protect the communities that live in their shadow. To witness the grand, slow-motion drama of plate tectonics in its most raw and visible form, we need to travel to the eastern side of the African continent. Here, the Earth is quite literally tearing itself apart. The East African Rift System is one of the most profound geological features on our planet, a colossal fissure network that runs for over 6,000 kilometers from the Afar Triangle in the north all the way down to Mozambique in the south. This is not a relic of some ancient event. It is an active, living, divergent boundary, a place where the massive African plate is slowly and inexorably splitting into two smaller plates, the Somali plate and the Nubian plate. Imagine pulling apart a piece of warm, thick clay. As you stretch it, the center thins, cracks, and eventually begins to drop down, creating a valley flanked by high shoulders. This is precisely what is happening across Africa, but on a scale that is almost impossible to comprehend. Magma from the Earth's mantle is welling up beneath the continent, creating an enormous dome of heat that is pushing the crust upward and outward. The crust, unable to withstand the strain, is fracturing along a series of faults, creating a complex network of fissures that mark the birthplace of a future ocean. In another 10 million years, or perhaps 50 million, the sea will likely flood into this vast lowland, splitting Africa apart and creating a new continent where the Somali plate drifts away into the Indian Ocean. The landscape this process has sculpted is one of breathtaking diversity and extreme beauty. The rift is not a single, clean crack but a branching series of valleys, some nearly 100 kilometers wide and several kilometers deep. These are flanked by towering escarpments, the sheer edges of the tectonic plates that have been tilted upward. Within these valleys, the volcanic activity is intense and spectacular. The same mantle plume that is splitting the continent also fuels some of the world's most iconic volcanoes. Mount Kilimanjaro, with its snow-capped peak rising improbably from the savanna, is a dormant stratovolcano born from this rifting process. To the north, Ethiopia's Erta Ale holds a different kind of wonder. It is one of the few volcanoes on Earth with a persistent lava lake, a bubbling, churning cauldron of molten rock that has been active for decades, a direct window into the planet's fiery interior. This volcanic activity has blanketed large parts of the rift floor in rich, fertile basalt soils, creating some of the most productive agricultural land on the continent. But perhaps the most defining features of the East African Rift are its magnificent lakes. As the land has sunk between the parallel faults, it has created a series of deep, elongated basins that have filled with water. These are not the shallow, placid lakes of other regions. They are deep, ancient, and often hypersaline. Lake Tanganyika is the most staggering example. It is the world's second largest freshwater lake by volume and the second deepest, plunging over 1.5 kilometers down. Its age and isolation have made it a hotspot of evolution rivaling the Galapagos Islands. Over 90% of the fish species that swim in its depths are found nowhere else on Earth. Similarly, Lake Malawi hosts an explosion of biodiversity with hundreds of unique cichlid fish species. In the north, the rift is shallower and more volatile. Lake Bogoria in Kenya is a soda lake fed by hot springs from the fissures below, its alkaline waters supporting vast flocks of flamingos that feed on its unique algae. These lakes are not just scenic wonders, they are vital lifelines providing water, food, and transportation for millions of people who live within the Rift Valley. This ongoing geological revolution is not just a subject for textbooks, it is a reality that scientists are monitoring with intense interest. Using the very technologies we just discussed, networks of GPS stations, satellite-based radar, and seismic sensors, researchers are measuring the rift's expansion in real time. The rates vary along its length, but in places like the Afar region, the plates are pulling apart at a speed of about 6 to 7 millimeters per year. While that might sound slow, the accumulated strain over decades can lead to dramatic events. In 2005, a series of massive rifting events in Ethiopia tore open a 60-kilometer-long fissure in just a matter of days, accompanied by thousands of earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, offering a stunning glimpse of how continents break apart in rapid, violent jerks rather than a smooth, continuous motion. This research is crucial for hazard mitigation, as the growing fissure system presents significant risks from earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and the potential disruption of infrastructure. Yet it also presents extraordinary opportunities. The geothermal energy potential along the rift is enormous, offering a clean, sustainable power source for the developing nations in the region. The East African Rift stands as the ultimate case study, a living laboratory that demonstrates with unparalleled clarity that our planet is a dynamic, ever-changing entity, and that its greatest fissures are not just scars from the past, but the very places where its future is being forged. While we often think of climate change as a story written in the atmosphere, a crucial chapter is being authored deep below our feet, within the very fissures that seam the planet's crust. These geological breathing points are not passive bystanders in our climate system. They are active, dynamic participants in a complex exchange of gases and energy that has been ongoing for billions of years. The most direct interaction comes from the steady exhalation of greenhouse gases. It's easy to picture a volcanic eruption as a singular, catastrophic release of gas and ash, but the reality is far more constant and pervasive. Through countless diffuse vents, fumaroles, and fissures, the Earth is continuously leaking carbon dioxide, methane, and other gases into the atmosphere. This process, known as degassing, is a fundamental part of the planet's carbon cycle. In fact, the carbon dioxide released annually from all the world's volcanic and tectonic fissures is estimated to be a significant fraction of the emissions from human activities. This natural background flux has helped regulate Earth's temperature for eons, playing a long-term role in the greenhouse effect that makes our planet habitable. However, the concern today is how this natural system might interact with and even amplify the rapid, human-driven increases in atmospheric carbon, creating a feedback loop that could accelerate warming beyond our current models. Beyond these global gaseous contributions, fissures have a profound ability to sculpt local climates and create astonishingly unique microenvironments. In the harsh, frozen expanse of Antarctica's dry valleys, one of the most Mars-like environments on Earth, life finds a tenacious foothold in exactly these places. Here, geothermal heat escaping from fissures melts the base of glaciers, creating vast, hidden networks of subglacial rivers and lakes, and even forming ice caves where the air temperature can be dozens of degrees warmer than the surface. In these humid, protected pockets, entire ecosystems of microbes, algae, and even tiny invertebrates thrive, utterly isolated from the rest of the world. This phenomenon isn't limited to the poles. In the high-altitude deserts of the Andes, geothermal vents provide warm, moist oases that support unique plant life and offer refuge to animals. The topography created by large fissure systems, like the steep walls of a rift valley, can also dramatically alter local weather patterns. These deep valleys can channel winds, create intense rain shadows, or trap cold air, leading to climate conditions that are completely distinct from the surrounding regions. The Great Rift Valley in Africa, for instance, has its own unique rainfall patterns that have directly influenced the evolution of its famed savannas and the migration routes of both animals and humans. Perhaps the most intriguing and concerning modern research revolves around how a warming climate might, in turn, awaken or alter the behavior of these very fissures. This is a stunning example of a two-way conversation between the atmosphere and the geosphere. In the Arctic, vast stretches of land are underlain by permafrost ground that has been frozen solid for thousands of years. This frozen layer acts like a cap, sealing in massive reserves of ancient methane, a potent greenhouse gas. As global temperatures rise, this permafrost is thawing at an alarming rate. As it melts, the ground loses its structural integrity, subsiding and cracking open new fissures. These freshly opened fractures then act as direct conduits, allowing the trapped methane to whoosh into the atmosphere, where it contributes to further warming, which leads to more thawing, a dangerous and self-reinforcing positive feedback loop. Similarly, the immense weight of continental ice sheets, like those covering Greenland, actually suppresses tectonic activity beneath them. As these glaciers melt and lose mass, the land beneath them rebounds upward in a process called isostatic rebound. This release of pressure can potentially reactivate dormant faults and fissures, leading to an increase in seismic activity and even influencing volcanic systems. This means our changing climate doesn't just affect the weather. It can literally change the shape and behavior of the solid Earth itself, revealing a deeply interconnected planetary system where a shift in one sphere can create a cascade of effects in another. Long before satellites could map them and seismographs could measure their pulse, the great fissures of the Earth were already being charted, not on paper but in the human imagination. For our ancestors, a steaming crack in the ground was never just a geological feature. It was a profound mystery, a place where the solid, predictable world gave way to something entirely other. These openings in the Earth's skin became the perfect canvas onto which cultures worldwide projected their deepest fears, their spiritual beliefs, and their attempts to explain a powerful and often terrifying natural world. This rich tapestry of myth and legend reveals a universal human impulse to find meaning in the planet's dynamism, transforming cold, hard rock into stories alive with gods, monsters, and cosmic significance. In the icy realms of Norse mythology, the very existence of the universe began with a fissure. The primordial void known as Ginnungagap was a vast, yawning chasm lying between the land of fire, Muspelheim, and the land of ice, Niflheim. It was within this great abyss that the first elements met, the fire melting the ice to slowly form Ymir, the first giant, and eventually the world itself. This concept of a generative void is powerful, the idea that all creation, all life and order could emerge from a profound nothingness, but these chasms were also gateways to the afterlife. Norse sagas spoke of fissures and caves that served as entrances to Hel, the underworld, a cold, misty realm ruled by the goddess of the same name. To stand at the edge of such a crack was to peer into the realm of the dead, a tangible connection to the afterlife that inspired both dread and a solemn respect for the forces that shaped their world. This theme of fissures as portals to divine or underworldly realms appears across the globe with striking similarity. In ancient Greece, the most famous example was the oracle at Delphi. The prophecy uttered here was not born from pure guesswork. It was believed to be induced by vapors rising from a deep fissure in the rock beneath the temple. The priestess, the Pythia, would sit atop a tripod over this chasm, breathing in these intoxicating gases now thought by some scholars to have been ethylene-rich, to enter a trance-like state where she could channel the wisdom of Apollo. The fissure was the physical link to the god, the literal breath of the earth that carried divine knowledge. The site was so revered it was considered the omphalos, the navel of the world, the central point from which all creation emanated. Here, a geological feature was not just spiritually significant. It was the very heart of the classical world's religious and political life, a place where kings and generals would journey to have their fates decided by the whispers from a crack in the ground. Across the Pacific, the volcanic landscapes of Hawaii are not just geological formations, they are the literal body of a deity. In Hawaiian tradition, the islands themselves are the creation of the fire goddess Pele. The countless volcanic fissures that streak across the Big Island, particularly along the East Rift Zone of Kilauea, are not random geological occurrences. They are understood as the places where Pele journeys, where she breaks through the surface of the earth, and where her passionate and volatile nature is made manifest. These fissures are her homes, her passageways, and the source of her creative and destructive power. The lava that flows from them is her sacred blood, and the new land it creates is her gift. This belief system fosters a relationship of deep reverence and interaction. Offerings of flowers, food, and prayers are still left at the edge of fissures and lava, flows to honor Pele and appease her temper. This legend provides a complete and elegant framework for understanding the island's dramatic geology, weaving it seamlessly into the cultural and spiritual identity of the Hawaiian people. For many Native American cultures, fissures and canyons were not merely inhabited by spirits, they were created by them. The origin stories of numerous tribes attribute the great rifts in the earth to the actions of ancestral beings or cultural heroes. In the stories of the Navajo or Dene, for instance, the landscape is a record of epic events. A great fissure or canyon might be the scar from where a monster was struck down by the hero twins, or the path taken by a holy person who escaped danger by causing the earth to split open. These features are chapters in a living history book, each crack and cliff face holding a story that reinforces cultural values, teaches moral lessons, and explains the tribe's deep, enduring connection to that specific place. The land is not a passive setting, it is an active participant in their mythology, and its fractures are the punctuation marks in its story. What unites these diverse cultural narratives is a fundamental human need to explain the unexplainable. A sudden earthquake that swallows a home, a volcanic eruption that destroys a forest but creates new land, a spring of warm water mysteriously bubbling from a crack in a frozen landscape. These were awesome and terrifying events. By attributing them to the will of a deity, the action of an ancestor, or the presence of a spirit, our ancestors transformed random, frightening natural phenomena into something with intention and meaning. This process of myth-making was an early form of science in its own right, a way of creating order from chaos. It provided rules for how to live in these dynamic landscapes, often establishing taboos that protected people from danger. More than that, it fostered a sense of awe and respect for the natural world, a recognition that humans are part of a much larger, more powerful system. These stories are far from primitive superstitions. They are a profound cultural response to the awesome power of the planet, a reminder that our relationship with the Earth has always been, and will always be, as much about story and spirit as it is about stone and science. While we often marvel at the raw power of fissures to reshape continents and fuel volcanoes, some of their most breathtaking contributions are not geological at all, but biological. These great cracks in the Earth's crust do far more than just release pressure from below. They act as incredible engines of biodiversity, creating some of the planet's most unique and isolated habitats. From the sun-scorched rift valleys on land to the lightless, crushing depths of the ocean floor, fissures provide the precise conditions for life to not only persist but to explode into a spectacular array of forms found nowhere else. They are natural laboratories for evolution, offering refuge, resources, and routes that have allowed life to thrive in the most unexpected places. Perhaps the most extreme example of this phenomenon exists in the eternal darkness of the deep ocean, along the mid-ocean ridges where tectonic plates are pulling apart. Here, at hydrothermal vents, superheated water, rich in dissolved minerals from the Earth's mantle, spews from fissures on the seafloor. The environment is as close to hellish as one can imagine. Temperatures can swing from near freezing to over 700 degrees Fahrenheit. The pressure is crushing, and the water is laced with toxic chemicals like hydrogen sulfide. For centuries, scientists assumed this was a lifeless desert. Then, in 1977, the submersible Alvin descended to the Galapagos Rift and made a discovery that rewrote the textbooks of biology. They found not a barren wasteland, but lush, thriving oases of life. Giant tube worms, some over 2 meters long, waved in the currents. Clams the size of dinner plates littered the seafloor, and blind white crabs scurried over the volcanic rock. This entire ecosystem exists entirely independently of the sun. Instead of relying on photosynthesis, it is powered by chemosynthesis, where specialized bacteria convert the toxic vent chemicals into usable energy. These bacteria form the base of a food web that supports a stunning menagerie of unique species, all huddled around the life-giving warmth and chemical soup pouring from the planet's deepest fissures. Back on dry land, the story continues, though in a completely different form. The great continental rifts, like the one in East Africa, have created a mosaic of habitats that has become a cradle of evolution. As the land sunk and volcanic mountains rose along the rift's edges, a vast array of microclimates was born. The deep valley floors became home to sprawling, alkaline lakes like Malawi and Tanganyika. Their ancient isolation has turned them into underwater Galapagos Islands. In Lake Malawi alone, over 1,000 species of cichlid fish have evolved from a handful of ancestors, each species perfectly adapted to a specific niche, some with specialized teeth for scraping algae, others for crushing snails, and still others for hunting other fish. This explosive diversification is a direct result of the geological fragmentation caused by the rift, which isolated populations and allowed them to evolve separately. Meanwhile, the highland forests that cloak the rift's escarpments act as isolated sky islands, providing refuge for rare and endemic species like the mountain gorilla. The fissure itself, therefore, is not a barrier but a creator of boundaries and opportunities, driving the evolutionary process at a breathtaking pace. Even in the planet's harshest deserts, fissures provide critical sanctuary. The Socotra archipelago, located off the coast of Yemen, is one of the most alien-looking landscapes on Earth. Its incredible biodiversity, including the iconic dragon's blood tree with its umbrella-shaped crown, is a product of its long isolation. But this isolation was itself created by geological forces. The archipelago is situated on the fracture zone where the Arabian plate is slowly tearing away from the African plate. This tectonic drama has lifted the islands high above the sea, creating a variety of elevations and trapping moisture from ocean fogs in deep canyons and fissures. These protected microclimates have allowed ancient flora to survive millions of years of global climate change, creating a living museum of species that have gone extinct everywhere else on the planet. The fissures and fractures in the limestone bedrock channel precious water, creating hidden reservoirs that sustain this unique ecosystem through long periods of drought. Beyond creating isolated refuges, fissures also serve as vital natural corridors, connecting landscapes and allowing species to migrate and mix. The Great Slot Canyons of the American Southwest, carved by water along erosional fissures in the sandstone, provide shaded, moist passageways for animals moving through an otherwise arid and exposed landscape. Similarly, the linear nature of a rift valley can funnel species along a predictable path, facilitating genetic exchange between populations that might otherwise be separated. This dual role, as both a refuge for endemism and a highway for dispersal, highlights the profound ecological importance of these geological features. They are not merely cracks in an inert planet. They are dynamic components of a living world, actively stitching together the tapestry of global biodiversity. From the tube worms at the bottom of the sea to the dragon's blood trees under the desert sun, life has learned to not just endure these openings in the earth, but to embrace them, transforming geological drama into biological wonder. Beyond their dramatic geological stories and ecological wonders, the fissures that seam our planet hold a more tangible, everyday value. They are powerful economic engines. The same forces that crack continents apart and fuel volcanic fury are also responsible for concentrating some of Earth's most valuable resources and providing clean, renewable energy that is shaping a more sustainable future. This isn't just a matter of academic interest, it's about practical benefits that directly impact our lives, our economies, and our global energy landscape. The process begins deep underground, where fissures act as the planet's natural plumbing system. Superheated water, rich with minerals dissolved from the surrounding rock, circulates through these fractures. As this hydrothermal fluid rises, it cools, forcing the dissolved minerals to precipitate out and crystallize within the fissure. Over millions of years, this process can fill a crack with incredibly dense and valuable ores. This is the origin story for many of the world's most famous gold and silver veins, like the legendary Comstock lode in Nevada, which was essentially a fortune in silver locked within a fault zone. The same mechanism concentrates copper, lead, zinc, and even precious gems. The Kimberley Pipes of South Africa, the source of so many of the world's diamonds, are essentially ancient carrot-shaped fissures that once funneled magma and other materials from incredible depths, carrying diamonds formed under immense pressure to the surface. Without these geological pathways acting as natural collection points, these immensely valuable minerals would be scattered and diluted throughout the crust, making them virtually impossible to mine economically. The very existence of the mining industry in many parts of the world is fundamentally tied to the network of fissures that have gifted us these concentrated treasures. Perhaps the most direct and revolutionary economic benefit of fissures in the modern era is geothermal energy. Here, we aren't just extracting a static resource left behind by ancient activity. We are tapping into a living, breathing power plant that the Earth itself provides. The principle is brilliantly simple. The same water that circulates through hot rock beneath active fissure systems becomes superheated, turning into steam. By drilling wells into these geothermal reservoirs, we can harness that steam to spin turbines and generate electricity, or pipe the hot water directly to heat homes and businesses. No country has embraced this potential more fully than Iceland. Sitting directly astride the mid-Atlantic ridge, the island is a web of active volcanic fissures, making it one of the most geologically dynamic places on Earth. Icelanders have turned this potential hazard into their greatest asset. Nearly 90% of Icelandic homes are heated by geothermal water, and over a quarter of the nation's electricity comes from geothermal power plants. The iconic Blue Lagoon, a world-famous spa, is actually the runoff from the nearby Svartsengi geothermal power plant, a perfect example of turning industrial output into a secondary tourist attraction. This massive investment in geothermal energy has freed Iceland from almost all dependence on imported fossil fuels for heating and power, providing immense energy security, low costs, and a remarkably small carbon footprint. New Zealand tells a similar story of geothermal prosperity. On the North Island, the topo-volcanic zone is a hotspot of fissure-related activity. The town of Rotorua is so infused with geothermal energy that steam rises from storm drains and backyards, and the distinct scent of sulfur is simply part of the local atmosphere. Here, geothermal power plants like those at Werrikei and Ohaaki have been supplying clean, baseload electricity to the national grid for decades. This reliable, renewable source of power is unaffected by droughts that can hamper hydroelectricity or calm winds that stop turbines, providing a crucial stable foundation for New Zealand's energy mix. The economic benefits ripple outward, creating skilled jobs in engineering, plant maintenance, and scientific research, all dedicated to managing and optimizing this incredible natural resource. The knowledge gained in these pioneering nations is now being exported globally as other countries with active fissure systems look to replicate their success and harness the Earth's inner heat. Then there is the economy of awe, the immense value generated by simply allowing people to witness these geological marvels firsthand. Tourism built around famous fissures is a multi-billion-dollar global industry. The prime example is Iceland's Thingvellir National Park, a UNESCO World Heritage Site that sits within a vast rift valley where the North American and Eurasian plates are pulling apart at a rate of about 2 centimeters per year. Visitors can literally walk through the Almannagjá Gorge, a massive fissure with towering rock walls that represent the boundary between two continents. The park is not only a site of profound geological significance, but also the historical location of the world's first parliament, blending cultural and natural history into an unforgettable experience. This draws hundreds of thousands of visitors each year who support local hotels, restaurants, tour guides, and the entire infrastructure of the Icelandic tourism industry. Similar stories play out at the volcanic fissures of Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, the dramatic slot canyons of the American Southwest like Antelope Canyon, and the geothermal wonderland of Yellowstone with its famous geysers, which are essentially vertical fissures. These places generate revenue that supports conservation efforts, creates local employment, and educates the public about the dynamic planet we live on, proving that the raw, untamed power of Earth's fissures has a powerful and sustainable economic value that extends far beyond the extraction of resources. For all their beauty and scientific intrigue, the dynamic nature of Earth's fissures carries a sobering reality. They are among the most potent and unpredictable sources of natural hazard on our planet. The same forces that build mountains and create new ocean basins can, without warning, unleash devastation that reverberates across continents and through human societies. The risks are not abstract, they are tangible threats to lives, economies, and the very infrastructure of our modern world. The most immediate and widely felt danger is seismic. Active tectonic fissures, particularly along transform faults like California's San Andreas, are the primary sources of earthquakes. The grinding friction between plates as they slide past each other builds up immense strain energy. When that stress finally exceeds the strength of the rock, it is released in a sudden, violent shudder that can radiate out for hundreds of miles. The damage comes not just from the initial shaking, which can topple buildings and bridges, but from the secondary effects it triggers, such as soil liquefaction, where solid ground temporarily behaves like a liquid, and devastating tsunamis if the quake occurs offshore. But the threat isn't confined to these famous, well-mapped faults. Hidden fissures buried under sediment or simply not yet discovered can produce equally destructive quakes, often with less warning, reminding us that our maps of the planet's fractures are still incomplete. Closely linked to this seismic risk is the volcanic fury that can erupt from fissures. While many fissure eruptions are relatively gentle outpourings of lava, like those recently seen in Iceland, they can also be spectacularly explosive and disruptive. The 2010 eruption of Eyjafjallajökull in Iceland serves as a perfect modern example of a fissure event with global consequences. The eruption began in March with a relatively quiet fissure opening on its flanks, but by April, the activity had migrated to the volcano's summit crater, where it interacted with overlying ice. This combination of magma and meltwater created a highly explosive reaction, generating a massive plume of fine volcanic ash that was carried by winds directly over Europe. The microscopic, abrasive glass particles in that ash cloud posed a catastrophic risk to jet aircraft engines, leading to the largest airspace shutdown since the Second World War. Over 100,000 flights were grounded, stranding millions of passengers and costing the global economy an estimated $5 billion. This event was a stark lesson in our interconnected vulnerability. A fissure opening on a remote Icelandic glacier could bring European commerce and travel to a standstill, demonstrating that geological hazards in one part of the world can quickly become a global problem. Beyond these sudden, catastrophic events, fissures pose a more insidious and creeping threat through ground instability and subsidence. In the arid southwestern United States, particularly in areas like Arizona and Nevada, the ground is quite literally sinking. This phenomenon, known as land subsidence, is often triggered by the overpumping of groundwater from aquifers. As the water is extracted, the porous rock formations that held it compact and collapse. This compaction frequently manifests at the surface as long, growing fissures that can tear through the landscape. These earth cracks can be dozens of feet deep and miles long, appearing suddenly and without warning. They have ripped through highways, split irrigation canals in two, undermine the foundations of homes, and threaten pipelines and railroads. Unlike an earthquake that strikes and is over, these fissures represent a slow-motion disaster, a visible symptom of unsustainable water use that permanently alters the landscape and creates persistent, expensive hazards for developing communities. The critical defense against these myriad hazards lies in the sophisticated mapping and monitoring technologies we now employ. This is where pure scientific curiosity translates directly into life-saving application. The networks of GPS stations and satellite-based radar we discussed earlier do more than just measure continental drift. They provide an early warning system. By detecting the infinitesimal swelling of a volcanic fissure system as magma intrudes underground, scientists can often give days or weeks of warning before an eruption begins. Similarly, by monitoring the subtle strain building along a fault, they can assess the increasing probability of a large earthquake, allowing for public advisories and reviews of emergency preparedness plans. This data is absolutely fundamental to intelligent land use planning. Knowing the precise location of an active fissure or fault allows city planners and engineers to avoid building critical infrastructure like hospitals, schools, and power plants directly on top of it. Building codes in high-risk zones can be strengthened to ensure new constructions are earthquake-resistant. This proactive approach to hazard mitigation, born from decades of geological research and technological innovation, is our most powerful tool for building resilience against the planet's inherent dynamism. It transforms the study of fissures from an academic pursuit into a vital public service, safeguarding millions of people who have chosen to make their homes in the shadow of these beautiful but powerful geological features. The human fascination with the great cracks in the Earth's crust extends far beyond the realms of science and myth. It has also provided a powerful and enduring source of inspiration for artists, writers, and filmmakers. For centuries, these geological features have served as potent symbols and dramatic backdrops, allowing creators to explore everything from the sublime power of nature to the deepest fissures within the human psyche and society itself. This artistic interpretation offers a unique cultural lens, revealing how our species has continually tried to process, represent, and find meaning in the planet's dynamic and sometimes terrifying beauty. We can trace this fascination back to the canvases of the Romantic painters of the 18th and 19th centuries, who were deeply drawn to themes of nature's overwhelming power and sublime terror. Artists like J.M.W. Turner and Caspar David Friedrich often used fractured, tumultuous landscapes to evoke a sense of awe and existential contemplation. In their works, a lightning bolt splitting the sky over a stormy sea or a dark chasm in a mountainside was never just a landscape feature. It was a visual metaphor for the tumultuous forces of creation and destruction, reflecting the inner emotional storms of the human soul. These painters understood that a fissure represented a liminal space, a threshold between the known world and the mysterious, uncontrollable depths below. By placing a tiny human figure gazing into such an abyss, they captured the profound insignificance of humanity in the face of nature's primordial power, while simultaneously celebrating the courageous human spirit that dares to look into the void. This theme of the fissure as a gateway to adventure and the unknown found its ultimate expression in literature with Jules Verne's classic 1864 novel, Journey to the Center of the Earth. Here, the concept is made thrillingly literal. The story begins when the eccentric Professor Lidenbrock discovers a cryptic message pointing to a passage into the Earth's interior through the crater of the Icelandic volcano Snæfellsjökull. The volcano itself is a real geological feature, a stratovol, Connor with a summit crater, but Verne brilliantly reimagines it as the entrance to a vast subterranean world. The descent into the fissure is a descent into a completely different realm, filled with prehistoric creatures, giant mushrooms, and vast underground oceans. Verne's genius was in taking the contemporary scientific debates of his time about geology, paleontology, and what might lie beneath our feet, and spinning them into a narrative of pure wonder. The fissure was no longer just a crack, it was a portal to a lost world, representing the boundless potential of scientific discovery and the irresistible human urge to explore the last uncharted territories. In the 20th and 21st centuries, the metaphor of the fissure has evolved to reflect more contemporary anxieties. Filmmakers, in particular, have used the sudden appearance of a great crack in the earth as a powerful visual shorthand for catastrophe and societal collapse. Disaster movies like San Andreas or 2012 feature spectacular scenes of the ground splitting apart to swallow entire cities. These CGI-enhanced chasms tap into a deep-seated primal fear of the very ground we stand on becoming unstable and untrustworthy. The fissure becomes a symbol of ultimate chaos, a complete breakdown of the natural order that mirrors the breakdown of society in the face of overwhelming crisis. Beyond literal disaster, the metaphor is also used psychologically. A character might be described as having a fissure in their mind or a crack in their personality, representing trauma, mental fracture, or a descent into madness. This literary device externalizes internal turmoil, making the intangible tangible. Perhaps the most nuanced modern use of the fissure is as a metaphor for societal and ideological divides. A playwright or novelist might depict a family or a nation being torn apart by a conflict described as a deepening rift, making the geological term a powerful analogy for political polarization, generational gaps, or cultural schisms. This usage suggests that these divides are not superficial disagreements but fundamental fractures in the very foundation of a group's identity, as difficult to repair as a continental plate boundary. This artistic reflection holds up a mirror to our world, urging us to consider the forces that pull us apart and the immense effort required to build bridges across these profound gaps. From the sublime canvases of the Romantics to the thrilling pages of adventure novels and the spectacular imagery of modern cinema, the fissure remains one of our most enduring and versatile cultural symbols. It is a testament to our endless fascination with the lines between light and dark, surface and depth, the known and the unimaginable, proving that the stories we tell about the Earth's cracks are ultimately stories about ourselves. While our high-tech orbital and airborne tools provide an incredible bird's-eye view, there's no substitute for getting your boots dirty and your hands on the rock. The gritty, demanding, and often exhilarating work of field geology is where the planet's secrets are ultimately unlocked, one careful observation at a time. This is where theory meets reality, and it requires a unique blend of old-school detective skills and cutting-edge technology, all carried on the backs of scientists willing to venture into some of the most extreme environments on Earth. The process begins with the most fundamental tool in the geologist's kit, the detailed field map. Armed with nothing more than a rock hammer, a handheld GPS, a compass for measuring the orientation of structures, and a trusty notebook, the field geologist walks the landscape in a series of meticulous transects. Every outcrop of rock is examined, every fracture is measured and logged. They are not just looking at the fissure itself, but reading the entire story written in the surrounding stone, the types of rock, how they are layered, and how they have been bent, broken, or offset by tectonic forces. This painstaking work creates a highly detailed geological map that shows not just where the fissure is, but its relationship to everything around it, revealing its history, its movement, and its potential for future activity. It's a slow, methodical process that forms the essential foundation for all subsequent study. But to truly understand the forces at work, you need to know what the rocks are made of. This is where sampling comes in. Using their rock hammers, geologists carefully break off fresh pieces of rock from the walls of a fissure, ensuring they collect unweathered samples that tell a true story of the interior. These samples are then bagged, labeled with precise coordinates, and sent back to the laboratory for analysis. Under microscopes and mass spectrometers, these humble rocks reveal astonishing secrets. Thin sections sliced from the rock and mounted on glass slides can be studied to identify the minerals present, which in turn tells us about the temperatures and pressures at which they formed. Geochemical analysis can detect trace elements and isotopes, acting like a fingerprint that can trace the magma's journey from the deep mantle or identify the source of hydrothermal fluids that have deposited minerals within the crack. This laboratory data provides the hard numbers that quantify the processes we can only qualitatively observe in the field, turning an interesting fracture into a data point in a global model of planetary dynamics. Of course, some questions can't be answered by looking at cold, static rock. For active fissure systems, we need to take the planet's vital signs in real time. This is where the deployment of sophisticated sensors turns field geology into a high-stakes medical examination. Researchers will carefully place networks of portable seismometers around an active volcanic rift or a creeping fault. These ultra-sensitive instruments listen for the faint pops and cracks of tiny earthquakes, mapping the subterranean geometry of the fissure as it extends and shifts. They also deploy gas spectrometers, often carried in backpacks, to sniff the air around fumaroles and vents, measuring the ratios of gases like sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide. A sudden change in these ratios can be a crucial early warning sign that fresh magma is rising and an eruption may be imminent. In the most extreme cases, scientists even use drones to fly directly into the plumes of active volcanic fissures, capturing gas samples and thermal imagery from positions far too dangerous for a human to occupy. This real-time biometric data is the pulse and breath of the living Earth, and capturing it requires both courage and precision. The stories from the front lines of this research read like chapters from an adventure novel. There are teams who spend months navigating the remote and rugged Danakil Depression in Ethiopia, one of the hottest and most geologically active places on the planet, to study the birth of a new ocean basin. They work in blistering heat, surrounded by acidic pools and toxic gases, all to place a single GPS receiver that will measure the continent's slow rip. Other researchers rappel into the steaming throat of a recently cooled volcanic fissure in Iceland, their helmets illuminated by headlamps as they map the intricate patterns of lava flow layers on the walls, a record of the eruption's progression. Then there are the seismologists who brave the bitter cold of Alaska or Greenland to service their sensitive instruments, knowing the data they collect on glacial earthquakes will help unravel how the melting ice is affecting the faults below. These aren't just scientists, they are modern-day explorers driven by an insatiable curiosity and a profound respect for the power they are studying. Their work is a powerful reminder that behind every clean data curve on a graph and every colorful satellite image, there are people who have endured physical hardship and embraced adventure to gather that crucial piece of the puzzle. This hands-on, ground truth data is the critical link that validates and gives meaning to the vast streams of information we receive from space. It ensures that our models of the Earth are not just elegant mathematical abstractions, but are rooted in the messy, complex, and awe-inspiring reality of the planet we call home. While the fiery spectacle of volcanoes and the immense power of earthquakes capture our attention, some of the most vital work done by Earth's fissures happens in the quiet, hidden darkness beneath our feet, where they play an indispensable role in the planet's lifeblood, its water. These subterranean fractures are far more than just cracks in solid rock. They form the essential plumbing of the hydrologic cycle, creating intricate underground networks that store, channel, and filter the freshwater upon which all terrestrial life depends. This relationship between rock and water is a delicate dance, one that determines the availability of resources for millions of people and shapes some of the world's most stunning and fragile landscapes. The process begins when rainwater or snowmelt percolates down through the soil. When it encounters solid, unfractured bedrock, it tends to pool and run off across the surface. But when that same water finds a fissure, it has found a highway into the depths. These fractures, whether tiny hairline cracks or gaping voids, act as preferential pathways, funneling water downward with dramatically increased speed and efficiency. This is the primary mechanism for recharging aquifers, those vast, underground reservoirs of freshwater stored in porous rock. Without these conduits, the water would simply never reach the deep storage zones that provide reliable, year-round water for wells and springs, especially during droughts. The fissures are the arteries that keep the aquifer's heart beating. Nowhere is this relationship more critical or more brilliantly engineered by nature than in the Edwards Aquifer of Central Texas. This isn't a typical aquifer consisting of loose, waterlogged sand and gravel. It is a karst aquifer formed in massive, fractured limestone. For thousands of years, slightly acidic rainwater has percolated down through a vast network of fissures, slowly dissolving the limestone and widening the fractures into an incredible maze of interconnected caves, channels, and conduits. This has created a highly efficient but also highly vulnerable underground water system. Water doesn't slowly seep through pore spaces here. It moves rapidly through these open channels, almost like a river flowing underground. This makes the aquifer incredibly productive, capable of supplying millions of gallons of water per day to the cities of San Antonio and Austin. However, this same efficiency means the aquifer is exceptionally susceptible to contamination. A pollutant spilled on the surface can enter a fissure and travel for miles through the conduit system without the natural filtration that occurs in slower, sandy aquifers, reaching a public well in a matter of hours or days. Managing this resource is a constant balancing act, requiring meticulous mapping of the fissure and cave systems to protect recharge zones, those areas where water enters the aquifer from development and pollution. The Edwards Aquifer is a powerful testament to how our access to clean water is directly, and sometimes precariously, linked to the hidden architecture of fissures below. The same dissolution process that created the Edwards Aquifer also sculpts some of the planet's most breathtaking subterranean landscapes. In karst regions across the world, from the jungles of Belize to the hills of Slovenia, water working through limestone fissures has created vast empires of caves. These are not simply hollowed-out rooms, they are the end result of a slow-motion geological masterpiece. It begins with a single fracture in the limestone. Water, enriched with carbon dioxide from the soil, forms a weak carbonic acid that slowly dissolves the rock along that fracture, widening it over millennia. As the crack grows, it captures more water, accelerating the process. Eventually, these enlarged fissures merge into complex, multi-level networks, creating magnificent caverns adorned with speleothems, the stunning stalactites, stalagmites, and flowstones that form from mineral-rich water dripping from the ceiling or flowing down the walls. But the story doesn't end underground. Sometimes the ceiling of a large cave becomes too thin to support the weight of the land above, and it collapses. This creates a sinkhole, a sudden and often dramatic depression at the surface. While sinkholes can be dangerous, threatening buildings and infrastructure, they are also a natural part of the karst cycle, providing another direct opening to the aquifer below and often becoming themselves unique ecosystems. These landscapes remind us that the world of fissures is not a separate realm. It is dynamically connected to the surface, with water acting as the constant sculptor and messenger between the two. The critical importance of understanding this intimate connection between fissures and water becomes most apparent in the world's arid and semi-arid regions. In places like the American Southwest, the Middle East, or parts of Australia, surface water is scarce and unreliable. Communities here are almost entirely dependent on groundwater drawn from deep aquifers. In these thirsty parts of the world, locating and mapping the fissure systems that channel water into these aquifers is not just an academic exercise, it is a matter of economic survival and human security. Hydrogeologists use a combination of techniques to trace these hidden pathways. They conduct detailed geological mapping to identify fault and fracture zones at the surface. They use geophysical methods like electrical resistivity tomography, which can detect changes in the subsurface that might indicate a water-filled cavity versus solid rock. They even employ dye tracing, a remarkably low-tech but highly effective method where harmless fluorescent dye is introduced into a sinking stream or a fissure and then monitored to see where and when it emerges at springs miles away. This painstaking work allows water managers to pinpoint the most productive zones for well drilling, avoiding costly dry holes. More importantly, it allows them to designate critical protection zones around the recharge areas, safeguarding them from activities that could poison the community's primary water source. In a world where water scarcity is becoming an increasingly urgent crisis, the ability to map and manage these subterranean fissure networks is one of the most powerful tools we have for ensuring a sustainable future, proving that the planet's deepest cracks are paradoxically key to sustaining life on its surface. Looking ahead, the field of fissure mapping is poised for a revolution, driven by technologies that will allow us to listen to the planet's pulse with a clarity we once thought impossible. The cornerstone of this future will be artificial intelligence. We are already seeing the first glimpses of machine learning algorithms capable of sifting through mountains of satellite data. Terabytes of radar measurements, thermal images, and spectral data to detect subtle ground deformations and thermal anomalies that even a trained human eye might miss. These AI systems can identify patterns and correlations across vast datasets, learning to recognize the faint precursors to an earthquake or the specific swelling of a volcano that indicates magma is on the move. This isn't just about faster analysis, it's about predictive power. Imagine a world where an algorithm could analyze decades of seismic data from a specific fault network, combine it with real-time satellite measurements of strain, and calculate a dramatically refined probability of a major seismic event within the next week. This shift from monitoring to forecasting would represent a quantum leap in our ability to protect vulnerable communities, moving us from a reactive stance to a truly proactive one. This AI-driven data deluge will feed into the next generation of predictive models, transforming them from theoretical simulations into living, digital twins of the Earth's most dynamic regions. These will not be simple models running on a single supercomputer. They will be integrated multi-hazard systems. A model for a volcanic rift zone, for instance, would seamlessly combine real-time data on gas emissions, ground deformation, and seismic tremor with sophisticated simulations of magma flow and lava viscosity. It could then run thousands of scenarios in parallel, providing civil protection agencies with highly specific forecasts. Not just that an eruption is likely, but the probable path of lava flows, the density of ash fall in surrounding towns, and the best evacuation routes based on projected road closures. This level of granular, actionable intelligence would transform disaster response from a chaotic scramble into a precisely orchestrated operation, saving countless lives and minimizing economic disruption. Perhaps one of the most exciting trends is the democratization of this science through widespread citizen science initiatives. The power of the crowd is becoming an invaluable tool. Imagine a simple, well-designed mobile app where hikers, farmers, or just curious residents in geologically active areas can upload photos and GPS coordinates of a new crack in the ground, a suspicious subsidence in a field, or a change in a familiar hot spring. This distributed network of millions of potential observers acts as a massive, real-time sensor web, providing on-the-ground verification for satellite data and often spotting the earliest signs of change. Projects like the U.S. Geological Survey's Did You Feel It? Program for earthquake reports have already proven the value of this approach. In the future, such platforms could be expanded to include monitoring of fissure gases or water chemistry, turning every citizen with a smartphone into a node in a global geological monitoring network, fostering a deeper public connection to the science that shapes their environment. This future of mapping will also be forced to confront the profound impacts of climate change, which is acting as a great revealer of the planet's hidden structures. In the polar regions, the rapid retreat of glaciers and ice sheets is like pulling back a vast white curtain, exposing a landscape crisscrossed with fissures we never knew existed. In Greenland and Antarctica, scientists are discovering extensive networks of subglacial fissures that are now being exposed to the atmosphere for the first time in millions of years. These are not just geological curiosities. They are critical new pathways for meltwater to reach the base of glaciers, potentially accelerating their flow into the ocean and contributing to sea level rise. Furthermore, the melting of permafrost across the Arctic is unlocking another hidden world of fractures in the previously frozen ground. As the ice that binds the soil together melts, the ground subsides, creating a new type of fissure known as thermokarst. These features are releasing vast stores of ancient greenhouse gases, but they are also providing a unique and urgent opportunity to map previously inaccessible fault systems and assess new geological hazards in these rapidly changing regions. The future of fissure mapping, therefore, is not just about developing new tools. It's about applying them to a planet that is itself changing in fundamental ways, offering both unprecedented challenges and extraordinary opportunities for discovery. While our journey has taken us deep into the cracks of our own world, the story of fissures does not end at the edge of Earth's atmosphere. In fact, by looking outward to our neighboring planets and moons, we gain a truly cosmic perspective on these geological features, discovering that our dynamic planet is just one participant in a solar system-wide drama of cracking, venting, and reshaping. The familiar processes we see at work in the East African Rift or along the Mid-Atlantic Ridge are not unique to Earth. They are universal expressions of a cooling, evolving planetary body. But by studying these alien landscapes, where conditions are often more extreme and the history is written in starker relief, we can better understand the fundamental forces that have shaped not just our world, but every world. Consider our rusty neighbor Mars. The red planet is a museum of geological wonders, and it is absolutely dominated by fissures on a scale that dwarfs anything found on Earth. The most spectacular example is Valles Marineris, a canyon system so immense it would stretch from New York to Los Angeles if placed on the United States. This is not a canyon carved by a river over millions of years like the Grand Canyon. It is a tectonic fissure, a colossal tear in the Martian crust that formed billions of years ago as the planet cooled and shrank, causing its skin to crack and slump downward. Orbiting spacecraft have mapped its intricate network of side canyons and landslides in stunning detail, revealing a history of immense geological stress. But the most tantalizing clues come from the newer, smaller fissures that spiderweb across the Martian surface, particularly in the Cerberus Fossae region. Images from NASA Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter show these fractures are often surrounded by dark, flow-like features. For years, scientists debated whether these were lava flows or something even more incredible. Recent data suggests that some of these may be the result of liquid water, briny and mixed with sediment, bursting forth from underground aquifers and briefly streaming across the surface before freezing or evaporating in the thin Martian air. This revelation that fissures might be the pathways for modern-day water activity on Mars has profound implications for the potential, even today, of microbial life clinging to existence in the planet's subsurface. The quest to read this planetary history has moved from orbiters to the ground itself, thanks to the intrepid work of robotic geologists. NASA rovers, from the twin explorers Spirit and Opportunity to the sophisticated laboratory that is Curiosity, have spent years doing exactly what a human field geologist would do. They drive right up to these Martian fissures and examine them firsthand. The Perseverance rover, currently exploring Jezero crater, is equipped with ground-penetrating radar that can peer beneath the surface to map the subsurface geometry of fractures and buried rock layers. Its cameras scrutinize the walls of small cracks and crevices, looking for layers of sedimentary rock that could only have been deposited in water, or for mineral veins that precipitated from ancient groundwater flowing through these very fractures. By analyzing the chemistry and mineralogy of these fissure-filling materials, the rovers are piecing together a story of a warmer, wetter Mars billions of years ago, a world where water likely circulated through a planet-wide network of cracks, potentially providing a habitat for the very first stirrings of life. These robotic missions transform abstract orbital images into tangible, on-the-ground evidence, proving that fissures are the keepers of a planet's deepest secrets. Perhaps the most astonishing discovery in planetary geology, however, comes not from a rocky planet, but from a small, icy moon of Saturn. Enceladus, a world only 300 miles across, should be a frozen, geologically dead ball of ice. Instead, the Cassini spacecraft revealed it to be one of the most dynamic places in the solar system. At its south pole, a series of massive fissures, nicknamed tiger stripes, scar the surface. These are not like the cold, static cracks on Mars. They are the source of enormous plumes of water vapor and ice crystals that erupt hundreds of miles into space. This is cryovolcanism, ice-cold volcanism, where the erupting material is water instead of molten rock. The mechanism is thought to be tidal flexing. As Enceladus orbits Saturn, the giant planet's gravitational pull squeezes and stretches the moon, generating enough internal heat to maintain a global, liquid water ocean beneath its icy shell. The pressure from this ocean forces water up through the tiger stripe fissures, where it instantly flash freezes in the vacuum of space, creating those magnificent plumes. Cassini didn't just photograph this spectacle, it flew directly through the plume, and its instruments made a stunning discovery. The ejected ice particles were rich in simple organic compounds, the building blocks of life, and molecular hydrogen, a key energy source for certain microbial ecosystems on Earth. On Enceladus, a fissure is not just a geological feature. It is a direct sampler from a hidden, life-giving ocean, offering us our best chance to search for biomarkers of extraterrestrial life without even having to land. This grand tour of the solar system's fractures fundamentally changes our perspective. It demonstrates that the principles of geology, the stress of a cooling crust, the buoyancy of a heated fluid, the relentless pull of gravity are universal laws. Valles Marineris shows us what happens when a planet cracks apart on a grand scale without the moderating influence of plate tectonics to recycle its crust. Enceladus teaches us that liquid water and the potential for life can exist in the most unexpected places, as long as there is an energy source to maintain it and a pathway, like a fissure, to connect the hidden ocean to the surface. By comparing these alien systems to our own, we can run natural experiments. We can see what Earth might be like without its continuous geological renewal, or what happens when water replaces magma as the primary eruptive material. This comparative planetology doesn't diminish Earth's uniqueness. It highlights the specific, fragile combination of factors: our active plate tectonics, our large moon, our distance from the sun, that have made our planet such a lush and life-filled world. The fissures of Earth, Mars, and Enceladus are all expressions of the same physical laws, but they tell wildly different stories about the evolution and potential of worlds, reminding us that our own planet is a single, precious data point in a vast and varied cosmic experiment. As we harness the incredible power of Earth's fissures for energy and knowledge, we inevitably step into a complex arena of ethical questions that demand our careful attention. The pursuit of scientific progress, while noble, cannot exist in a vacuum separate from the cultural, social, and environmental consequences of our actions. The very act of drilling into the Earth to tap geothermal energy, for instance, presents a classic dilemma of sustainability. While this energy source is far cleaner than fossil fuels, it is not an infinite resource. If we extract heat from an underground reservoir faster than it can be naturally replenished, we can deplete it, causing the reservoir to cool and collapse, rendering it useless for future generations. This is not a theoretical concern. It has happened in places like the geysers in California, where early, aggressive production led to a decline in steam pressure, requiring the injection of treated wastewater to maintain output. This teaches us a vital lesson. Even our cleanest solutions require thoughtful management and a long-term perspective that prioritizes the health of the geological system itself. Beyond the physical resource, we must also grapple with the cultural and spiritual significance of these powerful landscapes. For many indigenous communities around the world, features like volcanoes, hot springs, and specific fissures are not merely geological curiosities. They are sacred sites central to creation stories, traditional practices, and cultural identity. The development of a geothermal plant or the installation of seismic monitoring equipment on a mountain, considered the home of a deity, can be deeply offensive and spiritually damaging. The history of science is unfortunately littered with examples of researchers entering these communities, extracting data and samples, and leaving without any meaningful engagement or benefit to the local people. This approach, often called helicopter research, is a form of neocolonialism that treats traditional knowledge as inferior and local communities as mere obstacles or resources to be used. It ignores the profound understanding these cultures often possess, honed over centuries of living in dynamic landscapes. The Maori in New Zealand, for example, have an intricate knowledge of the geothermal taonga, or treasures, of the Taupo volcanic zone, understanding the subtle signs of change and the interconnectedness of the surface features long before modern science arrived. Dismissing this knowledge is not only disrespectful but also scientifically foolish, as it ignores a rich dataset of human observation. This leads directly to the critical importance of free, prior, and informed consent, a principle that must become the foundation of all ethical fissure research, especially on indigenous land. This means that communities must be engaged as equal partners from the very beginning of a project, not merely informed after all the decisions have been made. They must have the power to say no without coercion, and they must be given all the necessary information in a language and format they understand to make that choice. When consent is granted, it should lead to genuine collaboration. This can take the form of co-designing research projects, where traditional knowledge helps guide scientific questions, or creating programs that train and employ local community members in the research and monitoring work. The benefits of the research, whether in the form of jobs, shared data, improved hazard preparedness, or a percentage of royalties from resource development, must be equitably shared. This model transforms research from an extractive process into a reciprocal relationship, building trust and ensuring that the science serves the people most affected by its outcomes. The ethical challenges can also spill across national borders, creating potential for geopolitical friction. Many major fissure systems, like the East African Rift or the geothermal resources along the Central American volcanic arc, span multiple countries. Who has the right to the energy or mineral resources that lie beneath a transnational fault? How does one country's drilling or water extraction affect the stability or resources of its neighbor? These questions require sophisticated international agreements and transparent dialogue to prevent conflict and ensure that the benefits of these shared geological features are distributed fairly. The potential for tension is real, but so is the opportunity for cooperation. Joint monitoring initiatives and shared energy grids built around a common geological resource could become powerful tools for diplomatic collaboration and regional stability, turning a potential source of conflict into a foundation for peace. Fortunately, there are inspiring initiatives around the world pointing the way toward a more ethical future. In Hawaii, the management of Hawaii Volcanoes National Park involves a continuous dialogue with native Hawaiian cultural practitioners to ensure that scientific activity and tourism do not desecrate sacred areas. In Iceland, the Helliseiði geothermal power plant has pioneered a groundbreaking project called CarbFix, where carbon dioxide emissions are captured and dissolved in water before being injected back into the basaltic rock through fissures, where it turns into solid carbonate minerals within a few years. This is a stunning example of using our understanding of fissures not just to extract energy, but to actively heal the environment, addressing the ethical concern of emissions head-on. These examples show that ethical engagement is not a barrier to progress. It is the very pathway to sustainable and respectful progress. It recognizes that the Earth's fissures are more than just physical features. They are woven into the cultural and ecological fabric of our world, and our approach to them must be holistic, humble, and guided by a deep sense of responsibility for the planetary heritage we all share. When a new crack splits the Earth open during an earthquake or a volcanic rift begins spewing fountains of lava, the event is often captured within minutes and broadcast to a global audience. This instant access is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it offers an unprecedented opportunity for public education and awe. A drone video soaring over the mesmerizing river of lava from Iceland's Fagradalsfjöll eruption, for instance, can convey the sublime power and beauty of geology in a way a textbook simply cannot. These visuals inspire wonder and curiosity, drawing people into the story of our dynamic planet. Social media platforms become hubs of shared excitement, with experts and enthusiasts alike providing real-time commentary, identifying rock types, and explaining the mechanics of the eruption to a captivated audience. In these moments, media acts as a powerful bridge, translating complex geological processes into accessible, emotionally resonant experiences that can ignite a lifelong passion for Earth science. However, this same powerful tool often tilts towards sensationalism, particularly in the profit-driven ecosystems of certain news outlets and documentary channels. The narrative framework frequently shifts from one of fascinating natural process to one of impending doom. The Yellowstone caldera is perhaps the most abused example in this genre. While it is indeed a massive and active volcanic system, the constant drumbeat of documentaries asking if Yellowstone is overdue for an eruption creates a profoundly misleading and anxiety-inducing public perception. These programs often lean on hyperbolic language, dramatic music, and CGI animations of North America buried in ash, all while glossing over the critical nuances. They rarely emphasize that the annual probability of a super-eruption is astronomically low, or that the scientific community maintains extensive monitoring networks with no signs of an imminent catastrophe. This doomsday framing is not just inaccurate, it's irresponsible. It fosters a sense of helpless fear rather than informed preparedness, and it can lead to genuine public anxiety, with viewers thousands of miles away worrying about a threat that is vastly exaggerated for the sake of ratings. The chase for viral content further distorts reality. A smartphone video of a fissure opening up in a Kenyan highway after heavy rains can quickly circulate online with alarming captions about the continent splitting apart. While the video itself is real, the interpretation is often stripped of all context. This particular fissure was likely an erosional feature exacerbated by water washing away soft soil, not a new tectonic tear in the African plate. Yet, without that explanation, the clip becomes evidence for a dramatic but false narrative. This highlights a core challenge. Geological processes operate on timescales of millions of years, while media operates on a 24-hour news cycle. The slow, incremental dance of tectonic plates is reduced to a single, shocking event taken out of its immense geological context. The result is a public that may understand that the Earth can move, but lacks the framework to understand how, why, and what it truly means for their safety. Despite these challenges, media remains an indispensable ally for scientists and educators who are learning to master its language. The key is proactive rather than reactive engagement. Many geologists have become skilled communicators, using platforms like Twitter and YouTube not just to share findings, but to debunk myths in real time. When a sensationalized documentary about Yellowstone airs, experts quickly flood social media with threads explaining the actual science, using clear language and relatable analogies. They create their own compelling content, like the U.S. Geological Survey's visually stunning and meticulously accurate videos that explain volcanic hazards without resorting to fear-mongering. These efforts focus on empowerment through knowledge, teaching people how to interpret the landscape around them and understand the real risks, which are often more about localized landslides or earthquake preparedness than continent-shattering supervolcanoes. By embracing storytelling themselves, scientists can harness the same power that makes media so influential. They can frame geology as a detective story, a grand adventure of piecing together the planet's history from the clues hidden in its rocks and fractures. This approach doesn't just transmit facts, it builds trust and fosters a deeper, more nuanced public conversation about how to live safely and sustainably on a planet that is, and always has been, wonderfully alive. Imagine having the power to contribute to real scientific discovery from your own living room, using nothing more than a computer or a smartphone. This isn't a futuristic dream, it's the reality of modern fissure mapping, where scientists are opening their digital doors and inviting the public to become active partners in exploration. Across the globe, a revolutionary shift is taking place, moving geology from the exclusive domain of experts with rock hammers into a collaborative effort that harnesses the collective power of curious minds everywhere. These interactive projects recognize a simple but profound truth. There are more eyes on the planet than ever before, and by channeling that attention, we can achieve a level of observation that was once utterly impossible. This movement, often called citizen science, is transforming everyday people into invaluable data collectors, creating a global network of observers that is constantly listening to the subtle shifts and size of our living planet. One of the most powerful tools in this new arsenal is the online platform that turns satellite imagery into a giant, interactive puzzle. Projects like NASA, CosmoQuest, or the US Geological Surveys, did you feel it? Program allow anyone with an internet connection to sift through high-resolution images of the Earth's surface. A user might be presented with a detailed snapshot of a volcanic landscape in Iceland or a desert region in Arizona and asked to trace lines, identify potential fractures, or mark areas of ground deformation. What seems like a simple game is actually a critical first step in data analysis. While algorithms are good at processing numbers, the human brain remains uniquely skilled at pattern recognition, especially when it comes to identifying the subtle, often faint signs of a nascent fissure that a computer might overlook. Each click, each traced line contributes to a massive crowdsourced dataset that helps professional scientists prioritize where to focus their more detailed and expensive ground-based research. This process doesn't just accelerate mapping. It creates a community of engaged individuals who gain a deeper appreciation for the complexity and beauty of Earth's geology, all while making a tangible contribution to our understanding of it. For observations that are more immediate and local, a new generation of smartphone apps puts a geological field notebook in everyone's pocket. Applications like My Earthquake Advisor or region-specific apps developed by Geological Surveys allow people to report ground cracks, small tremors, or changes in spring water activity the moment they witness them. A farmer in California notices a new crack in an irrigation ditch after a rainstorm. A hiker in Hawaii smells an unusual concentration of sulfur near a familiar trail. A homeowner in Japan feels a series of small tremors. Instead of these observations being lost, they can be instantly logged with a precise GPS location, a photo, and a few descriptive notes. This creates a rich, real-time tapestry of ground truth data that complements satellite monitoring. When hundreds or thousands of these individual reports are aggregated, they can reveal patterns that would be invisible otherwise, providing scientists with an invaluable, distributed sensor network that is constantly feeding information from the front lines of our dynamic planet. The true power of this approach is crystallized in the success stories from communities living in the shadow of active volcanoes. In places like Indonesia and Guatemala, where large, professional monitoring networks can be sparse, community-led watch programs have literally become a lifeline. Volunteers, often trained by local geologists, learn to recognize the subtle warning signs of volcanic unrest, the increased steaming from fumaroles, the subtle swelling of the ground, the changes in animal behavior, or the increased frequency of small earthquakes. They use simple, robust tools to measure gas emissions or water acidity and report their findings via text message or app to a central observatory. This hyper-local knowledge is irreplaceable. In 2010, this kind of vigilant community observation on the slopes of Mount Merapi in Indonesia provided critical early warnings that supported official evacuation orders, saving countless lives when the volcano experienced a major eruption. These programs do more than just gather data. They build resilience, empower communities with knowledge, and foster a profound sense of environmental stewardship, transforming fear into informed action. This wave of participatory science is also making deep inroads into education, shaping the next generation of informed citizens and potential scientists. Interactive mapping projects are being integrated into school curricula, allowing students to move beyond textbook diagrams and engage with real, current data from ongoing geological events. A classroom in Oregon can virtually map the fissures of New Zealand's topo-volcanic zone, while students in Italy can analyze satellite data showing the slow drift of the Arabian Plate. These experiences make abstract concepts tangible and exciting. Universities and organizations are also developing virtual field trips using immersive VR technology, allowing students to stand on the rim of a bubbling volcanic crater or walk through a freshly opened fissure without ever leaving the classroom. This hands-on, experiential learning demystifies science, showing it as a dynamic process of discovery rather than a static collection of facts. It teaches critical thinking, data analysis, and most importantly, it instills a sense of connection and responsibility for the planet we all call home, proving that the most important tool in understanding Earth's dynamic features is not a satellite or a sensor, but an engaged and curious public. While we often look to ancient ruins or buried cities for clues about our past, some of archaeology's most astonishing discoveries haven't been found in places built by human hands, but in the deep, natural vaults created by the Earth itself. Fissures, those very same breathing cracks we've been exploring, have proven to be among the most extraordinary and accidental time capsules on the planet. They possess a unique and almost poetic ability to capture and preserve moments in time, sealing away everything from a single footprint to an entire ecosystem in a sudden geological embrace. This incredible intersection of geology and archaeology reveals a powerful partnership where the very forces that shape our planet also act as guardians of human history, protecting fragile stories that would have otherwise vanished into dust. Perhaps the most iconic example of this perfect preservation is found not in a grand tomb, but in a layer of volcanic ash in Litoli, Tanzania. Here, roughly 3.6 million years ago, a light ashfall from a nearby volcano settled over a landscape still damp from a recent rain. Across this fresh, soft canvas, two of our early ancestors, Australopithecus afarensis, walked across the plain, their feet leaving sharp impressions in the volcanic material. Soon after, another eruption sent a second layer of ash down, gently burying and cementing those footprints in place. The specific type of ash, called carbonatite, had a chemical reaction with the rain that turned it into a substance almost like concrete, locking the tracks in an immaculate state of preservation. This wasn't just a lucky find, it was a revelation. Those footprints provided irrefutable, tangible evidence that our ancient relatives were already walking upright on 2 feet millions of years ago, a critical milestone in the story of human evolution. The fissure-driven volcanic activity that created the ash didn't just destroy. It recorded a single, mundane walk across the landscape, gifting us a snapshot of a day in the life of a creature from a world we can scarcely imagine. This same process of volcanic preservation operates on a much larger scale as well. The ancient Roman city of Pompeii is, of course, the most famous case, but the phenomenon is global. In El Salvador, the ancient Maya village of Serene is often called the Pompeii of the Americas. Around the year 600 AD, the nearby Loma Caldera volcano experienced a fissure eruption, but unlike the violent explosion that buried Pompeii, this event was a slower, gentler event. It began with a series of earth tremors that warned the residents, who evidently fled in time, leaving their homes and belongings behind. Then, the eruption sent a plume of fine, cool volcanic ash and steam billowing over the village, burying it under nearly 5 meters of protective sediment. This sudden, yet non-destructive, burial preserved an astonishingly intimate look at everyday life for common Maya people, not just the elites. Archaeologists have found perfectly preserved thatched roofs, sleeping mats, half-eaten meals still on the table, and even the carefully tended garden rows of a farmer, with the ridges for his crops still visible in the ash. The Fissure eruption created a perfect, sealed snapshot of a thriving community, frozen at a precise moment in time, offering a uniquely democratic view of history that grand temples and palaces alone could never provide. Beyond the blanket of volcanic ash, fissures and sinkholes themselves often become direct repositories for artifacts and even human remains. In the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, a vast network of natural sinkholes known as cenotes pockmarks the limestone bedrock. These are not simply holes in the ground, they are the visible entrances to a vast underwater river system, formed over millennia as acidic rainwater dissolved the limestone along fissures and fractures. For the ancient Maya, these cenotes were far more than just a vital source of freshwater in a jungle environment. They were sacred portals to the underworld, known as Xibalba. As such, they became sites of ritual offering and sacrifice. Over the centuries, countless artifacts were deliberately dropped into these deep, dark waters. Exquisite jade jewelry, intricately painted pottery, and even gold figurines. The cool, fresh, and often anoxic water at the bottom of these deep pits created an environment almost entirely devoid of oxygen, which dramatically slows the process of decay. This allowed organic materials that would normally perish in the jungle climate, objects made of wood, cloth, or even to survive for over 1,000 years. Modern archaeologists working with technical divers can now explore these submerged time capsules, recovering objects in a state of preservation that is simply unattainable in any other context, giving us a direct window into the spiritual and material world of a lost civilization. Perhaps the most poignant discoveries come from fissure caves that acted as natural traps. Throughout history, animals and occasionally humans have fallen into deep, narrow fissures in the rock, their remains becoming stranded and eventually covered by sediment washed in by rain. A famous example is the complex of caves at Atapuerca in Spain. Here, a system of limestone fissures acted as a natural pitfall trap for hundreds of thousands of years. Early hominins, including Homo heidelbergensis, a likely ancestor of both Neanderthals and modern humans, would sometimes fall in, and their bones would accumulate at the bottom, layered alongside those of other animals. The stable, cool environment within the deep fissure protected these bones from scavengers and the elements, preserving a massive and incredibly valuable fossil record. The sheer density of finds in one site, known as Cima de los Huesos or the Pit of Bones, has provided an unparalleled sample of an entire human population from the Middle Pleistocene era, allowing scientists to study physical variation, health, and even behavior within a single, ancient group. The geological fissure, in this case, became an unintentional graveyard, but one that held the keys to understanding a critical chapter in our own evolutionary journey. The partnership between these two fields extends beyond mere preservation to the very framework of dating human history. This is where geology provides archaeology with its most essential tool, a reliable timeline. When archaeologists find a stone tool or a fossil buried in a layer of sediment that was once ash from a fissure eruption, they can call upon geologists to date that ash layer directly. Techniques like argon-argon dating or uranium series dating measure the radioactive decay of certain elements within volcanic rock, providing an absolute age for that specific geological event. If a hominin fossil is found beneath that ash layer, we know the fossil must be older than the eruption. If it's found above the layer, it must be younger. This allows scientists to bracket their finds in time with remarkable precision, building a robust chronological framework for human evolution and migration that is independent of guesswork. The fissure, through its volcanic emissions or the sediment it captures, provides the clock, and the artifacts provide the story. Without this geological context, we would have a collection of fascinating objects but no reliable way to know their order or their age, leaving our history fragmented and out of sequence. This beautiful synergy shows us that the Earth doesn't just hold our history, it actively helps us write it, providing the pages, the ink, and the dates on the calendar, all within the deep, quiet vaults of its forgotten cracks. The ground beneath our feet is supposed to be the ultimate symbol of stability, the one thing we can always count on to be solid and unwavering. So what happens when that fundamental certainty is ripped away, when the very earth cracks open or begins to shudder violently? The psychological impact of living with such dynamic geology is a profound and often overlooked dimension of the human story, a deep-seated emotional response that ranges from primal terror to transcendent awe. This isn't just about the physical damage caused by an earthquake or a volcanic eruption. It's about the invisible scars and the remarkable resilience that these events forge in the human spirit. To truly understand our relationship with the planet's fissures, we must venture beyond the seismographs and into the human heart, exploring the complex tapestry of fear, adaptation, and wonder that defines life on the edge. For communities living along active fault lines like those in Japan or California, a low-level hum of anxiety can become a permanent background noise in daily life. This isn't a paralyzing fear that stops people from living, but rather a conditioned vigilance, a subconscious awareness that the world can change in an instant. In Japan, a nation built on the Pacific Ring of Fire, this awareness is woven into the very fabric of society. From a young age, children participate in rigorous earthquake drills, learning to instantly dive under their desks at the first sound of an alarm. Families keep emergency go bags stocked with water, food, a radio, and a whistle by the door, a constant, tangible reminder of the potential for disaster. This preparedness is a form of collective psychological armor. By ritualizing the response to a threat, they transform the unknown into something manageable, replacing sheer panic with a rehearsed set of actions. It's a way of asserting control over the uncontrollable, a cultural coping mechanism that has been honed over generations of living with tectonic instability. The goal isn't to eliminate fear, but to domesticate it, to turn it into a useful tool that enhances survival rather than hinders life. However, when the big one actually hits, this controlled anxiety, Chinese letter, be overwhelmed by pure primal terror. The experience of a major earthquake is uniquely traumatic because it violates our most basic sense of security. Psychologists note that the trauma isn't just from the shaking itself, but from the complete loss of control and the utter unpredictability of the event. The sound often comes first, a deep, groaning roar from the earth itself, followed by a violent lurching that makes standing impossible. Buildings creak and sway, objects fly from shelves, and the world becomes a chaotic, deafening blur. In the immediate aftermath, the psychological impact is profound. People often experience acute stress disorder characterized by hypervigilance, insomnia, and an intense startle response. Every aftershock, every rumble of a truck passing by can send the heart racing, reigniting the trauma. For some, this can develop into long-term post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, where the memory of the event is so powerful it triggers avoidance behaviors, anxiety attacks, and a deep-seated reluctance to ever feel truly safe inside a building again. The ground, once a source of comfort, becomes a source of perpetual threat. Yet, in the face of this trauma, we also see the extraordinary emergence of community resilience. This is perhaps the most powerful psychological response to sharing a geological hazard. The same event that terrorizes individuals has a paradoxical way of binding communities together with incredible strength. In the moments after a quake, social barriers dissolve. Neighbors who may have never spoken before work together to check on the elderly, share supplies, and clear debris. This collective action creates a powerful sense of solidarity and shared purpose, which psychologists identify as a key factor in recovery. Helping others becomes a way of helping oneself, providing a sense of agency in a situation that feels overwhelmingly chaotic. This community resilience is a living thing, built and reinforced through shared stories, memorials that honor those lost, and annual drills that act as rituals of remembrance and preparedness. It's a testament to the human ability to not just endure, but to find meaning and connection in the aftermath of disaster. But the human response to fissures is not monolithic, and it's certainly not defined solely by fear. For every person who experiences terror, another feels an overwhelming sense of wonder and inspiration. This is the other side of the psychological coin, the sublime attraction to the raw power and grandeur of these geological features. Standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon, gazing into a depth carved by water exploiting countless fissures over millennia, can evoke a feeling of awe so potent it becomes a spiritual experience. This emotion, studied by psychologists, is characterized by a sense of vastness and a need for mental accommodation. It literally shifts our perspective and makes us feel connected to something much larger than ourselves. This awe can be a powerful antidote to anxiety. It encourages a focus on the incredible beauty and complexity of the natural world, rather than solely on its capacity for destruction. Tourists flock to volcanic fissures in Iceland not to be frightened, but to be humbled and amazed by the Earth's creative fury, to witness the birth of new land right before their eyes. This desire to confront and even embrace geological power is a fundamental part of our fascination, a recognition that within the danger lies an undeniable, majestic beauty. Bridging the gap between debilitating fear and informed awe is where education plays its most crucial role. Knowledge is the most powerful tool for psychological resilience. Understanding the science behind why the Earth moves demystifies the event, stripping it of supernatural terror and reframing it as a natural, predictable process. When people learn that earthquakes are caused by the release of built-up stress along a fault, and that aftershocks are a normal part of the crust readjusting, the experience becomes less random and frightening. Seismologists and psychologists often work together to develop public messaging that emphasizes preparedness without sensationalism, providing clear, actionable steps that empower individuals. This education extends to understanding the warnings, knowing that most large earthquakes are preceded by a series of smaller foreshocks, or that certain changes in animal behavior or groundwater levels can sometimes be precursors, gives people a sense of agency. It transforms them from passive victims of a chaotic event into active participants in their own safety. This psychological shift from helplessness to empowerment is perhaps the greatest defense against the trauma of living on a dynamic planet. It allows us to respect the power of the Earth's fissures without being paralyzed by fear, to build our lives in their shadow with both caution and courage, acknowledging that the same forces that threaten our existence are also the very ones that have shaped our world into a place of breathtaking wonder. While we often think of geothermal power as the primary energy gift from the Earth's fractures, the true potential of these subterranean pathways extends into far more innovative and transformative territories. The same geological features that bring steam and heat to the surface are now being reimagined as the cornerstones of a truly sustainable energy future, offering solutions to some of our most pressing global challenges. This isn't just about tapping what's already there. It's about engineering new ways to use these deep Earth structures for storage, generation, and even cleaning up our atmosphere. The most straightforward extension of this idea leverages the power of water. In regions with significant tectonic activity, fissures don't just carry hot water, they create the very topography that enables hydropower. The steep, dramatic escarpments of a rift valley, formed by the downward slip of land between parallel faults, create immense elevation drops over short distances. This is the perfect recipe for high-pressure hydropower generation without the need for massive, ecologically disruptive dams. The East African Rift, for instance, isn't just a geological wonder, it's a potential powerhouse. The steep cliffs and deep valleys provide natural conduits and drops for water, allowing for the development of run-of-the-river hydroelectric projects that generate clean electricity by harnessing the gravitational energy of water flowing through this fissure-sculpted landscape, turning the continent's tectonic drama into a source of sustainable development. But the real innovation lies not just in using the landscape fissures create, but in actively engineering the fractures themselves. This is the brilliant premise behind enhanced geothermal systems, or EGS. Traditional geothermal energy relies on finding naturally occurring pockets of hot, permeable rock with enough water to carry the heat to the surface. EGS technology shatters that limitation in a process that is essentially giving the Earth a controlled, helpful fracture. Engineers drill deep into hot, dry rock that lacks natural permeability. They then inject water at extremely high pressure, carefully fracturing the deep bedrock and creating a vast, artificial network of fissures. Cold water is pumped down one well. It circulates through this man-made underground radiator, picking up heat, and then returns to the surface as steam or hot water through another well to drive turbines. This technology effectively allows us to create geothermal resources anywhere there is hot rock deep underground, vastly expanding the potential map for clean, baseload power. Projects like the Utah Forge Initiative are pioneering this technology, drilling into granite deep beneath the earth to perfect the techniques of creating and managing these artificial fissure systems, aiming to unlock a virtually limitless supply of always available renewable energy. Perhaps the most futuristic application involves using these deep fractures not for extraction, but for storage and environmental repair. The intermittent nature of renewables like solar and wind is a major hurdle. The sun doesn't always shine, and the wind doesn't always blow. We need massive, long-term storage solutions, and the answer might lie thousands of feet below us. Deep saline aquifers and porous rock formations, often accessed through existing or induced fissure networks, are being investigated as giant natural tanks for storing compressed hydrogen. Excess solar and wind power can be used to split water molecules through electrolysis, producing green hydrogen. This hydrogen can then be injected and stored safely in these subterranean reservoirs, ready to be withdrawn and used to generate electricity or power fuel cells when demand is high. This turns the subsurface into a colossal battery, smoothing out the peaks and valleys of renewable generation. Even more remarkably, these same geological features offer a powerful tool for carbon sequestration. The same process used in EGS can be adapted to pump captured carbon dioxide deep underground, where it is injected into basalt formations. The CO2 reacts with the calcium and magnesium in the basalt, a rock often fractured by tectonic activity, and over a period of a few years, it solidifies into stable carbonate minerals, essentially turning greenhouse gas into solid rock. The Carbfix project in Iceland has already demonstrated this stunningly successful technology at the Hellisheiði power plant, where a significant portion of the plant's emissions are dissolved in water and pumped down into the volcanic basaltic rock, where they mineralize permanently. This isn't just storing the problem, it's erasing it, and it's all made possible by understanding and utilizing the permeability and chemistry of the Earth's fractured foundation. These pioneering efforts represent a fundamental shift in how we view our relationship with the planet's subsurface. We are moving from simply extracting resources to actively collaborating with geology, using its inherent properties to solve complex modern problems. The fissures that once only symbolized danger and instability are now being recognized as vital infrastructure for a sustainable future. They offer the volume for massive energy storage, the porosity for trapping harmful emissions, and the heat for endless clean power. This forward-thinking approach showcases a profound synergy, where the ancient, slow-moving processes of plate tectonics provide the very tools we need to build a stable, clean energy landscape for centuries to come, proving that the solutions to our greatest challenges may have been lying in wait, deep beneath our feet all along. Yet for all their resilience and power, these geological wonders are surprisingly fragile, and the very human fascination they inspire can, if left unchecked, become the very thing that threatens their existence. The call to protect these unique fissure landscapes is not just about preserving scenic beauty. It's about safeguarding active geological processes, irreplaceable ecosystems, and sacred cultural touchstones for the generations who will inherit this dynamic planet. The threats they face are as varied as the features themselves, often stemming from our desire to access their resources or experience their grandeur firsthand. Mining operations, drawn by the rich mineral veins that fissures so often create, can completely dismantle a landscape, turning a complex geological story into an open pit and leaving behind a scarred terrain and contaminated waterways. The pursuit of geothermal energy, while a clean power source, must be developed with extreme care, as over-extraction can deplete reservoirs and even induce seismic activity if not managed sustainably. The pressure of urbanization and infrastructure expansion presents another layer of challenge. As cities grow, they often sprawl directly onto active fault zones or the flanks of volcanic fields, putting more people at risk and necessitating the paving over or modification of the very features that define the area. Roads, pipelines, and housing developments can disrupt groundwater flow that is critical to the health of the fissure ecosystem, alter natural drainage patterns, and introduce pollution into these sensitive systems. Perhaps the most complex threat comes from tourism itself. While it brings economic benefits and fosters a love for these places, an unmanaged influx of visitors can love a site to death. The delicate, crusty formations around hydrothermal features are easily broken by a single misstep. The narrow walls of a slot canyon are vulnerable to erosion from thousands of touching hands. The serene silence of a sacred rift valley can be shattered by the constant noise of vehicles and crowds, diminishing the spiritual experience it has offered for millennia. Thankfully, there are powerful models of success that show us how to get this balance right. The global recognition afforded by a UNESCO World Heritage Site designation has been a game-changer for many fissure landscapes. Thingvellir National Park in Iceland, where you can stand between the North American and Eurasian tectonic plates, is not only a protected national park but also a World Heritage Site, a status that ensures its geological and cultural significance is preserved under international agreement. This dual status helps secure funding for conservation, mandates sustainable visitor management plans, and elevates its importance on the world stage. Similarly, the Hawaii Volcanoes National Park protects not only the active volcanic fissures of Kilauea and Mauna Loa, but also the unique ecosystems they have created and the profound cultural landscapes sacred to native Hawaiians. These parks don't simply put a fence around the wilderness, they actively manage access through carefully built boardwalks, designated viewing areas, and educational programs that teach visitors how to be respectful stewards, ensuring that the wonder remains undiminished for those who follow. True conservation, however, goes beyond lines on a map and requires a deep, collaborative approach that honors all the values these landscapes hold. This means moving beyond a model that prioritizes only geology or only recreation, and embracing one that integrates ecological and cultural preservation as equally vital. It involves working directly with indigenous communities who have been connected to these places for centuries, incorporating their traditional knowledge and spiritual values into management plans. It means implementing smart policies like limiting daily visitor numbers, requiring guided tours in the most fragile areas, and creating alternative revenue streams for local communities that are tied to preservation rather than extraction. The goal is not to lock these places away, but to foster a kind of access that is mindful, educational, and sustainable, one that recognizes that our privilege to witness the Earth's incredible power comes with the profound responsibility to ensure our presence does not become the force that silences it. Protecting these breathing cracks is ultimately an act of humility and hope, a promise to future generations that they too will have the chance to stand in awe at the edge of a canyon, feel the warmth of a geothermal spring, and hear the ancient stories whispered from the depths of the living rock. Imagine a classroom not with four walls, but with the towering cliffs of the Grand Canyon or the steaming volcanic terrain of Iceland. This is the power of integrating the study of Earth's fissures into education. It transforms abstract geological concepts into tangible, awe-inspiring experiences that can ignite a lifelong passion for science. The traditional model of learning about plate tectonics from a static textbook diagram pales in comparison to the moment a student virtually stands on the mid-Atlantic rift in Thingvellir National Park, understanding that they are literally straddling two continents pulling apart at a rate slower than their fingernails grow. By using fissures as a central theme, educators can create a narrative thread that connects seemingly disparate topics: earthquakes, volcanoes, water resources, and energy, into a cohesive story about our living, breathing planet. This approach moves beyond rote memorization of terms like divergent boundary or hydrothermal vent, and instead fosters a deeper, systemic understanding of how our world works, making geology relevant to every student, whether they aspire to be a scientist, an engineer, an artist, or an informed citizen. The toolkit for bringing these dynamic features into the classroom is more accessible and exciting than ever before. For a truly hands-on experience, students can physically model the formation of a rift valley using simple materials like clay or wet sand, applying tension to watch the material thin and fracture, replicating the birth of a place like the East African Rift on a tabletop. They can build shake tables to test structures on unstable ground, directly engaging with the engineering challenges of building in seismically active zones. But the real game changer is immersive technology. Virtual reality field trips are no longer science fiction. With affordable headsets or even just a smartphone, students can embark on guided journeys to remote and hazardous locations. They can descend into a detailed simulation of a hydrothermal vent ecosystem on the ocean floor, surrounded by bizarre and beautiful tube worms, or witness a fissure eruption in Hawaii, feeling the scale and power of the event from a safe, virtual distance. These experiences are not just visually stunning, they create emotional connections and lasting memories that a paragraph in a book simply cannot match. This educational shift is supported by a wealth of incredible, often free, resources developed by geological surveys and research institutions worldwide. Organizations like the United States Geological Survey and NASA offer extensive online portals filled with interactive maps that allow students to overlay earthquake data onto tectonic plate boundaries, track volcanic activity in real time, or explore LiDAR imagery to spot hidden faults in their own local region. Many of these agencies also run fantastic school partnership programs where actual field geologists video conference into classrooms for live Q and sessions, or even arrange for students to analyze real seismic data from monitoring stations. For younger learners, animated series and interactive games from public broadcasting networks make the concepts engaging and age-appropriate, following a cartoon character on an adventure through the rock cycle, or playing a game to build a volcano that can erupt successfully. These resources demystify the work of scientists and show students that geology is an active, evolving field of discovery, not just a chapter in a history book. The ultimate goal of this educational focus extends far beyond passing a test. It is about cultivating a new generation of geo-literate citizens. In a world facing complex challenges like climate change, resource management, and natural hazard mitigation, understanding the fundamental processes that shape our planet is no longer a niche interest. It is an essential component of informed decision-making. A student who has virtually explored the geothermal wells of Iceland understands the practicalities and promise of renewable energy. A student who has tracked earthquake aftershocks online appreciates the critical importance of building codes and emergency preparedness. By grounding this knowledge in the compelling framework of Earth's fissures, we give young people the context to understand news stories about a volcanic eruption disrupting air travel or a new fault discovery impacting urban planning. We empower them to ask insightful questions, evaluate risks, and contribute meaningfully to societal discussions about how we live sustainably on a dynamic planet. This is the profound legacy of education inspired by the Earth's cracks. Not just creating future geologists, but fostering a global community that is curious, engaged, and deeply respectful of the powerful forces that continue to shape our world. Our journey across the skin of a living planet brings us to a profound realization that these forgotten fissures are far more than mere cracks in an inert world. They are the very pulse points of Earth, the conduits through which it breathes, cools, and renews itself. From the continent-splitting drama of the East African rift to the delicate microbial oases at deep-sea hydrothermal vents, we have seen how these features are fundamental to the planet's geological metabolism. They are not scars from a distant past, but active, dynamic systems that continue to shape continents, power volcanoes, and trigger earthquakes, reminding us that we live on a world of magnificent and relentless change. This journey has also revealed the deep and enduring connection between these geological forces and the human story. We have built our civilizations along these fractures, drawn by the fertile soils and precious resources they provide, even as we have learned to respect the immense hazards they pose. Our myths and legends are filled with their presence, from the oracle at Delphi to the home of Peel, illustrating how these openings in the earth have long been woven into our attempts to understand our place in the cosmos. Today, that relationship is evolving once more, as we learn to harness their geothermal breath for clean energy and use advanced technology to listen to their subtle shifts, transforming ancient threats into modern tools for sustainability and safety. Ultimately, the story of Earth's fissures is a powerful lesson in interconnectedness. It is a narrative where geology cannot be separated from ecology, as these cracks create unique habitats that foster incredible biodiversity. It is a story where science is enriched by culture, where indigenous knowledge and satellite data together create a more complete picture of our world. And it is a reminder that our future security and prosperity are deeply tied to our understanding of the ground beneath our feet. To navigate the challenges of climate change and resource scarcity, we must continue to learn the language of the planet, to read the clues written in its rock, and to listen to the whispers from its depths. The great naturalist John Muir once wrote, "The mountains are calling and I must go." That call is an invitation to curiosity, to exploration, and to a deeper relationship with the astonishingly dynamic world we call home. We encourage you to answer it, to look closer at the landscape around you, to support the scientific research that unlocks these mysteries, and to share your own wonder with others. The adventure into history's hidden depths is far from over, and we hope you will join us for the next chapter.